You know, the pop culture poems, I learned that from a poet named Edward Field, who's still alive today in New York, 101 years old.
Amazing.
Jerry Loughlin showed me some of his poems, and you and I chatted about this earlier. They just really opened my eyes. They were so funny. They were about the Bride of Frankenstein. They were about being gay, about being in New York. And I was in graduate school, and I was studying the drabbest stuff. It just really made me see the possibilities for poetry, where I saw before they were very limited. You were going to be a grad student. You were going to write essays. You were going to get them published in periodicals. But I'd read those in grad school, and they were just so academic and dry. I'm not a dry person.
You certainly are not. And I feel in my own poetry studies, when somebody would bring in a poem that is very ornate or archaic, we recommend your poems. Mm-hmm. So I think you are, in fact, carrying that tradition on for the younger generation as well.
I hope so. I mean, I like being an antidote.
Right.
Yeah. An antidote to the drab.
Right. It's like a particular kind of humor. I think to actually just say that, oh, your poems are humorous, okay, fine, there is a little to that. But the way that you make it look so easy, but it's so layered, I think that's really what I admire about your poems, is that it has this almost facade of looking as if it's very effortless. But in fact, it isn't, right? I mean, it's not like, do you just pump out these poems?
I wish it were. No. Well, you and I chatted about this too, and people go to see great athletes. This is going to be a flattering comparison. People go to see great athletes to see them do difficult things well, and sometimes easily. And my easygoing poems, 4 or 5 drafts are not unusual. Weeks between, I have a whole collection of poems that want attention. So every morning I get up, go up to my studio, and see what's going to come up and asked to be finished or worked on or coddled, because some poems need coddling. And that's the one that's the one I spend time on.
It's like poems as children. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I write for middle grade readers, and here comes the poetry joke. Not that there isn't plenty of money in poetry, but middle grade novels pay pretty well. And they used to fly me all over the place. I'd go, I have school visits and stuff, but now, I've got a few miles on me, and if I go for a school visit, it's like, who's the old guy? And I have to go in and I have to say, it's me. I'm in my 80s and you're 14, Let's find out what we have in common. My poems, which I read when I go do school visits for prose, my poems will establish that commonality, because I am funny and I am irreverent and I am snarky and I am satirical, and young readers love that stuff.
And that's first the hook, and then you find out there's a lot more behind it within the poem. I just find it so fascinating that there are certain fairy tales, certain tales that we know well, that you keep reinventing. And that's what I really love too, is that sometimes the fairy tale itself or the tales, the stories are in fact living, because there's not just a finality after you write a poem about it.
Yes.
Yeah. So there are a lot of different perspectives that keep on popping up for this one story that we thought we already knew. And I think the biggest example for me is A Little Red Riding Hood.
He doesn't want to emerge from behind a tree. He doesn't want to compliment her outfit. He doesn't want to hear the reserve in her voice. He decides to be daring. He asks if she wants to see his lair. He bites his tongue, corrects himself. Apartment. He watches her handle his mementos. He answers questions about the photos of his parents. He takes her riding hood. He brushes off nettles with his tail and hangs it up. He agrees to do that again, the brushing part. He likes the way she sprawls in his favorite chair. He excuses himself to look up Stockholm Syndrome. He discovers that it takes longer than an afternoon. He throws himself at her feet. He feels her hand in his fur, probing for muscles. He's glad he went on that diet. He hears it start to rain. He puts some more wood on the fire. He helps her take off those little black shoes.
The wolf imagery, the wolf itself as an animal, I thought also was pretty ubiquitous in other collections too.
Right.
But it's not the Red Riding Hood, Little Red Riding Hood wolf, right? Like it's, do you have like a fondness for like the wolf, what it means, what the animal means?
What I have is a fondness for ancillary characters. I mean, another wolf is like in movies, there would be a two-shot, wolf and then red. But when I was writing this and I thought about the pictures of his parents, I thought, oh, that's going to work. Because I write a little like a musician who's working on a piece and he tries one chord after another and he keeps shaking his head. And then he's nodding when it works. He has his guitar. I was nodding at that. When you see he has a favorite chair, he has parents. He uses his tail as a kind of brush. All those things are bringing this wolf alive to me. I cannot write the poem about Red Riding Hood's father, although I want to, but I keep sort of asking for it, and it hasn't showed up yet. But he's a character I'd be interested in. I wrote a whole series of poems about a parson who went to the little town where Red Riding Hood's mother and she live, and I put characters in it. It just didn't work at all, But it doesn't mean I won't go back and find the baker. Who's the baker in the little village that Red Riding Hood and her mother lives in? Who are these people? That's what I'm curious about.
When you write about not just reinventing pop culture or like bringing in mythology, but like your own work too, the ones that do not actually bring in mythology. I mean, the ones that will have like a self-referential world built in. They seem to come with a very fully realized world. And I think what I love about that is like we are just like put in there were these fully realized characters. And I love how you talk about that because like, you're thinking about it in terms of almost casting. Like you already have like characters built in when you bring the reader into the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, have world will travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I really saw that in Indigo because I thought, and Indigo, it is a pretty interesting and amazing book because you wrote in this form called Hustle.
Yeah.
The whole book is hustles, but you, of course, bend and break the rules. But mostly, I think there is a faithfulness to the form. I don't think the faithfulness to the form completely breaks off at any moment. And I think one of those things is the fact that the stanzas are almost their own world. But how did you decide to write in Hustle for this collection?
I saw some that I admired, so I went and read a little bit about them. They can be longer than, I think maybe the minimum is 5 or 6 couplets, and you go as long as you have enough nerve to keep going. But you're absolutely right. Each couplet was supposed to have enough pizzazz, enough life, enough electricity to stand on its own. So writing 7 or 8 of those to make up one poem, you've got, energy in every one. And then it's held together. As you know, the ghazal starts with 2 rhyme words and use one again and again. But for the record, more than one people told me that writing a book of ghazals was not a real good career move because a lot of people, friends of mine wrote, what? What are you doing? Because they're not my easygoing style at all. They're a lot more compressed. which is how diamonds are made, from coal. But I was so excited about the form that I did what I did to a certain extent with the fairy tales. I must have written 5 of them a week, just as fast as I could. And I would lie in bed at night and I would think, what can I use for a subject? What can I use for a topic? What can I use for a keyword? Usually in ghazals, the keywords are at the end. So I would move them and make them the second last word, or I would rhyme the second last word so they would chime, with the very last word, the keywords. I had so much fun, but I wouldn't suggest that, to anybody to do it. I would suggest writing ghazals because they're a wonderful ancient form. In the original form, you're supposed to say your name, use your name in the last couplet. And I did that a few times, but I really enjoy writing. And when I'm not having a good time, then I can't work. I've been misled. I've gone into, Dante's dark wood. And I got myself out of the woods with ghazals. I wrote and I wrote. I was so happy. I would tell Bianca, after I was done, and she would say, when Bianca says to me, how'd your day go? She means, did you get good work done? Not how do you feel? Did you get good mail? And I would tell her, and I had a wonderful morning. And then I would eat lunch, kiss her goodbye, and go to the races.
May I ask you to read one from Indigo?
Nostalgia Cable brings back Howdy Doody, a thing on a string, a gizmo. Tying off as I watch, I remember my heroine mentor calling the syringe a gizmo. Of course she'll make it in LA. She's already been Miss Ice Cube Tray, Miss Search Engine, Miss Apprehension, and Miss Gizmo. It might be dangerous, but we'll be right outside. A book with a gun in it, a hidden microphone. Safe word for, I like this too much, is gizmo. His dangling parts fascinated her, which he took as a very good sign, but she'd never talk dirty, referring to everything down there as his gizmo. Lipo tires of lotus and wild geese. He thinks of his son, Po Chin, fascinated by the peddler and his costly, intricate gizmos.
Thank you so
I
much.
remember writing that. Gosh, good for me.
It's really amazing because it starts and ends, of course, just within the stanza, somewhere that's unexpected.
Right.
But you build everything together, and then it's just like a whole different world, right? One of the things, of course, that's just just delighted me so much was the fact that in a poem, in a stanza about Lipo, it ends with gizmo. I mean, I'm not sure if that sentence exists anywhere else.
Yeah, it's not. I don't see it very much either. Although, the rhyme of Poe and gizmo would attract not just me, but other poets.
Another way I think your poems could be working in a form and working in a world that we may already be familiar with, but reinvents it in surprising manner.
One of the ways I do that, if I have 200 words of a long, leisurely poem, I just take out 100. I make myself take out 100 words and just see what I have left.
Actually, a good friend of mine, Nikhil, she's in Nikhil Davis is in a workshop with you, and that's one of the secret tricks I learned from her that you taught her.
Good.
Yeah, was to actually just take things out.
Take things out.
And it sounds like simple, but it's really sometimes it's killing your darlings. So it's actually a very hard work to take things out and to make it work, but it does work. It does work. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think there are certain people who told me hey, if you want to go over a page, you better have really something to say.
Right.
Right.
Or at least be interesting.
Be interesting, exactly, because it's very hard to keep that momentum going, and I So I learned that trick, and I always remember that when I'm writing too.
I do it all the time.
I wanted to talk about your next to last publication, which is I Dreamed I Was Emily Dickinson's Boyfriend, which is a fantastic title. Which is, and this is one of those things where I feel as if also you are, not only it's like mythology and stories, but you're doing a lot of nod to the writers, the famous writers, and like, you know, are basically our ancestors that came before us, right?
Right.
Yeah, and to modernize them and to actually have them just live in that moment. And I think that has like a built-in irreverence, which also I find to be a very interesting quality, recurring quality in your poems.
Well, I'm a smarty pants. I've always been a smarty pants, yeah.
This was Wormwood Review. This was when you were in graduate school.
Yes, the first of the independent magazines that I've ever, I didn't know they existed. You know, Jerry did. He was submitting to them and publishing them. Publishing with Bukowski, you know, and I would publish with Bukowski, and Jerry and I would go see Bukowski, which was, you know, something you only wanted to do once, frankly.
When sometimes there's humor involved, people may think that something is simpler, even in terms of sentiment, than it really is. I mean, do you run into that?
I do.
Yeah.
Not so much in the last maybe 5 or 8 or 10, maybe, 5 or 8 or 10 years. But before, what am I now, 86? When I was in my 70s, I would read with my friends. And I mean, we're all kind of in the stand-up poetry, you know, mode anyway. But more than one person has said to me or one of those friends, well, that was very entertaining, but I waited for you to read a real poem. And they meant meter and or rhyme. And they may have meant high seriousness. And if it's high seriousness, I thought, you're in the wrong place, pal, because you're not going to get that with me, or, you know, or someone like Charles Harper Webb, or Jerry Laughlin, or Chuck Stetler, or, you know, and better known, Dean Young, those guys. You're not going to get high seriousness on the surface.
But it's almost as if, like, you know, because it's humorous already, it's not serious, which I don't think are the same thing.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Funny poetry, humorous poetry falls almost toward the category of light verse. And then you're in trouble. Because there's good light verse, but I don't write light verse, you know? I write verse that brings light, but I don't write light verse.
Right. And that's actually really true when I also looked at your, and forgive me, I haven't read all of them, but like I know some of like your famous young adult novels, and they're not dealing with a subject that's light. You know, there was one that was about school shooting, and
yeah. There was one in Stoner and Spaz. The girl is a drug addict. I miss marijuana, but a lot of it, and what a potty mouth. Oh my God. So no, you know.
That's why I like what the distinction that you made is that it's not a light verse, but you bring lightness into the poem. On that note, may I have you read one of my favorite poems from this collection?
This poem is from I Dreamed I Was Emily Dickinson's Boyfriend. The poem is called Yahweh Barbie. And I have to give credit to Denise Duhamel, a friend of mine who writes a lot about Barbie and her friends. Yahweh Barbie. Forget Nurse Barbie with her pink stethoscope. No more firefighter Barbie who checks her makeup before rushing to the blaze. Yahweh Barbie is jealous and angry. She's a devouring Barbie. Imagine her at Becky's next tea party with pretend this and pretend that and a kitten in a bonnet. Barbie will bring a whirling tempest. Oreos and Ritz crackers utterly destroyed. Becky's frilly room a wasteland. Dream horse running amok. Dream camper exploding with Ken inside. The army of brats will bend the knee and avert every eye since thou shalt have no other dolls before Barbie.
Amazing. Thank you.
You know, the energy as I was working on that poem just got faster and faster. The pilot light, you know, flared up with all its blue and yellow. I remember rolling through to the end of that poem and thinking, okay, I'm done for the day.
It almost feels like a brief history lesson about like monotheism.
Yes.
Yeah. And that also makes me just laugh so much because it is because we had like polytheism before, and then suddenly it became monotheism, and that whole world, that history is also encapsulated in that poem. And like that's what I think about like when something on a page like that's like delightful, but also has a completely different world that you bring in.
At my best, that works. Yeah.
I mean, I always love it when I see somebody. It just feels like the poet had a lot of fun.
Right. Me too.
Right?
Me too.
Yeah. So I think when you actually see that, you're like, oh my God, this is like a poem that I want to read again, and also like kind of read out loud. I mean.
Yeah, there's like Kim Adonisio. She's kind of a sourpuss, but boy, does she have fun writing. You can just feel it on the page.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I love her too.
I do too.
Yeah, I took a couple of her workshops, and she's just delightful.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is this sense of wonderment that you've retained all throughout all of your collections, and I remember somebody saying that sense of wonderment. It's like they termed it a faux naivete. It's as if somebody is pretending to be younger than they are or more naive than they are.
Right.
Is that like a mode that you think about when you're writing, or is it's something that you just kind of develop?
It's developed, I think, on its own.
Yeah.
I can't write as the guy who's worried about his mortgage or his car payments. I have to be someone else. I have to be someone, maybe in cap and bells, like the fool in the plays. Someone who could tell the king that he's a jerk and not get his head cut off. But that isn't me in my everyday life. So I like put on those clothes, put on the harlequin outfit, put on the jangling stuff, and I'm somebody else for a while.
Yet bringing in the poet's own insights.
Oh yeah.
I think that's really what makes it work, because like no matter what, I can see the poet behind it.
Right.
Right. The autobiographical details really do not matter because like what I'm seeing as like the true poet when I see is the point of view, is a voice, it's a craft.
Right.
And that's what I think when I see a poet, that's what I'm seeing is that's the poet.
Ed Field, who I saw, 70 more years ago, had a voice. That's what they always talk about in class. You want to find your voice. And he had it, and I never heard a voice like that before reading poetry. Yeah. And now there's Russell Edson, and there's the crazy guys, and they all have voices, but he was the one who just opened the door for me and ushered me through. Ed did. I can almost see it now. He was like me, slender, bald, and amiable. I can almost see him opening the door. And Ronnie, this is the way. And it was the way.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the stand-up poetry movement? Like I know it's it officially I think dates back to 80s, but I have a feeling that developed a lot longer.
Yeah, I don't remember the dates, but I know it was Suzanne Lummis and Charles Harper Webb and Jerry Laughlin, Laurel Ann Bogan. We used to all read together. And I remember in Charles's introduction or Suzanne's introduction, they had a stand-up poetry anthology. And they made a distinction about the poets being stand-up guys or gals, that you could trust them. You could trust them with your time. You could trust them with your attention. And they won't bore you. And you'll leave reading a stand-up poem usually in a better mood than when you started. So it is performative, if that's the word, or performance-based, because we always stood up and did it. And it was a kind of a reaction against, it was far from the Black Mountain School, but it's a reaction against against formal poetry, against anything that was, the word jejune, it's a great word, against anything that was jejune or tired. It pushed back against all of that, pushed back always against the serious. We were always anti-serious.
revising it by ear, it really has the stand-up poets, the stand-up's influence to it. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I tell my students, get out of the chair, get on your feet, hold the poem in your hand, walk around the room, read it out loud. I don't know what it is about movement and reading out loud, but it really, really helps.
There's this emphasis in performance also helps the poem itself.
Oh, yeah.
Like move.
Yeah.
Like even on the page and like even in your ears.
Right.
Yeah.
I go to spoken word performances and I just love them. Everybody's young. They've bothered to memorize a poem, which kills me, something I can't do easily. The room is always full of energy. They're just great to go to. And I don't do spoken word, but I love it. I love it and I love hearing it done.
Congratulations on your latest book, Pandora's Kitchen. It has a very unique strength, in my opinion, and it's because some of these subjects that you obsess about, they come out later in other collections. One of the things I said earlier in the interview is, in fact, the wolf, to actually see the different rendition of the wolf or the Little Red Riding Hood tale get reinvented in different collection with a completely fresh point of view. They also tie the collections together. So that's what I don't know if that's like something that you think about when you're putting,
No, that's too much thinking for me. You know, I remember being in graduate school and thinking, if I get out of here with my master's degree, I'll be a lucky cowboy, because school was hard for me. You know, my friend Jerry Laughlin, he would tell me what was going to be on the test by Professor A because he's had the professor and he remembered the test. So I don't have that. I'm not a thoughty guy.
Well, even if that's not intentional, it is there.
I write enough poems and I wonder if I have enough poems for a book. You know, I don't have a theme for the book. I don't do that. But if I have 75 poems, I know I don't want to publish 75 poems. So I go through and I start sifting and I lay them out and I lay them on the floor, I walk around, squat down, crouch down and read them, you know, move them around. And little by little, they'll sort themselves out. You know, I'll put the poem to one side. I mean, it's not like throwing them out of the orphanage, you know, and I'm only going to adopt this many. But sometimes those that I cast aside will come back. But to pull this book together, that's how I did it. I knew where I wanted to end. I knew there was a variety of poems as usual. And I wanted to make something like a little fever chart when I arranged the poems so that all the funny ones were at one place, you know, or all the short ones. I wanted to see it move through so they had a kind of rhythm of their own. And that's what I got.
You know what I find that you don't do is that you almost have no epigraphs.
Right.
Yeah, to explain the poem.
Right.
And that's what I find that like so amazing, because you're trusting in some ways for the readers to actually have the knowledge about certain things. So how much do you withhold and how much do you reveal?
The music tells me what belongs. So I read the poem, I get up, I walk around, I read it out loud, I see what's there, I see what's hurting my ear a little. I'm seeing if the sounds, the beginning of the center of the line don't match with the sound at the end. The music tells me what belongs.
I wanted you to read one more poem and this is from the new book, Pandora's Kitchen, and then it's one of my favorite poems in there. Would you please?
And which one is it?
Oh.
Ezra Pound in the Heartland. I'm waiting behind a tractor pulling a wagon full of cow shit. And when a train called the Illinois Zephyr passes, there's a storybook engineer leading out of the locomotive, passenger car with a child waving, dining car where someone lifts a cocktail, and a caboose. But the flashing lights and clanging bells carry on. The line of pickups behind me gets longer. Some of us step out and stretch, nod to each other, shrug. Pretty soon a nameless locomotive rattles by, hauling cattle cars stuffed with frightened animals. No pedals on a wet black bow today. My high school teacher told us that Pound was a fascist and read propaganda on Italian radio. And then my teacher assigned the next essay, Can a great artist be a bad person? As the tractor finally pulls away and the tang of manure disappears, I imagine my teacher reading those earnest compositions. His mind wanders to a stack of bills. His town is small. His wife is pretty and disappointed.